Jack Holmes voice clip. So we're going to talk about two things today, which will be Quest and National Benchmarking Scheme. First one I'm going to talk about is Quest. Quest is assessed in three different stages. Stage 1 being self-assessment, which is carried out by them, but I'll talk more about it in a minute. And the next one is external validation, and the final one is ongoing maintenance. But organisations are then graded to achieve the Quest Quality Award. So we're going to start off with self-assessment, which is organisations assess their own business operation against the Quest best practice principles, which basically means that they will look at their own company and see if it matches up to the one of Quest. They'll identify strengths / areas for improvement. So what they'll do is they'll look around their facilities and say, this isn't good enough, we need to improve this, and then say how we're going to do that. And following on from that, they're going to draw up an action plan to improve the management / services that they offer to the customers. So they're going to look at what's going wrong with the management maybe, or the service that they offer. So if they're not being used, why they're not being used. They're going to look at the management saying, is it strong enough, are we doing enough management to motivate the staff, things like that. And the organisation should consider the service from the point of the customer, because ultimately it's the customer's point that really matters, because they're the ones that are going to keep going back and back to the facility. And if not, and the staff aren't looking at it from their point of view, it's not really worth doing this, because it's the customers that matter. Then we've got external validation, which is to be looked at by an external assessment by trained assessors by the industry. So what they'll come and do is they'll assess you in many different ways, which I'll talk about now. So the assessment will review the progress of the centre and provide a score as a percentage. So we've got 60% and above is approved, from 68% to 74% is commended, 75% to 83% is highly commended, and 84% plus is excellent. But the external validation also includes a mystery visit to see that they are carrying out what they said they're doing in this visit from the external validation, and say that everything's up to date and alright. And the Quest approval lasts for 2 years, and after that 2 years over, the self-assessment cycle repeats, going back to the external validation. And now I'm going to move on to National Benchmarking Scheme. National Benchmarking Scheme is used to compare the results. It looks at customer satisfaction, cost of services, income profit, how often they are used by disadvantaged and new users, and how the filters are used. So they look at their customer satisfaction, because if the customers aren't satisfied, they don't want to come back, they'll end up complaining about the place. So if they get the customer satisfaction right, that's probably one of the main things you need to get right, 'cause it's all about the customers. They're the ones that will keep coming back and returning to use a service. And the cost of the services, whether it's worth running them, because if they're not being used well by the customers, then it's not really much point using them, because you'll just lose profit. How often they're used by disadvantaged and new users. This would be, because if they're not being used by disadvantaged and new users, they'll be looking at why aren't they being used. They'll be looking at how they could promote to use by disadvantaged and new users. And mainly, have they got the facilities to provide for disadvantaged users? And that might be a factor they need to look at. It has to survey 350 customers, costing £2,700. And then fully qualified researchers conduct survey using a standard questionnaire. And the MBS can use